Buenos nachos and welcome back to the channel. On today's episode we're going to be working on an SNES Jr console, and we're going to be bringing it into the digital age, or at least as much as we possibly can, because we're going to be installing this right here. What is this, you ask? Well, this is an RGB mod for the SNES Jr, aka SNES 2, or the Super No Nintendo 2 console, Super No Nintendo Jr. And it'll bring this Super Nintendo into the digital age. So we'll be able to finally use a multi-out to RGB SCART cable with our RetroTINK 4K. Without further ado, let's begin. Man, I want to go home and play some Super Nintendo. We're going to open up the console and then we'll get started. And of course we'll start by removing the 4 screws to open up the console. And if you don't remember our previous video in this series where we refurbished the internals of this console, you can always go ahead and click right over here. We replaced the capacitors and of course upgraded the voltage regulator and cleaned up some corrosion around the cartridge port. See, now you can't fast forward this section. Alright, and one screw did not want to come out, and I don't know why. Ah, there we go, it dislodged. And now for the reveal. There you are. And in case you're wondering, we're using our fancy screw set, which you can purchase off of our website. Comes with all the bits you need to deal with at least the internals of the Super Nintendo. Now, obviously, we need to remove this circuit board from the inside of the SNES, so we're going to do that now. Make sure you keep all your screws separated. These long silver ones are for the cartridge slot, including this long one right here that goes next to the multi-out, which doesn't want to come out just like the first time. All right, and then we have 4 screws right here holding the main board assembly. And once you've removed all of those screws, the board will come out nice and easy. I do have one screw right here, which of course is deciding to be screwed up. Yeah, I don't know, I can't really do any better than that right now. I'm only like halfway through my coffee. I don't know why that screw is always a pain. It was a pain in the past video and it's a pain in this video. So once you do that, the board will come out just like that. And of course this little metal shroud will come up no problem. I don't know if we're going to be doing any work right here, but if we are, we'll be ready. And my understanding is that you're going to need to remove this metal heat sink. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. We'll dislodge the voltage regulator. And I guess I'm going to get ready to pause the video because, well, it's time. And you have 2 more screws to remove right here, which of course won't get removed in time before the video, before that camera ends over there. Well, we'll see if we can beat the timer. Okay, and there we go. All right, so now that you've removed all of the screws that we need to remove at the moment, let's go ahead and take this out of the bag here. I kind of was getting anxious and removed some of it, but here it is. Now we can begin installing this thing. So of course, I've not done one of these before, so I'm going to be following a guide on the internet. Alright, so we have our SNES Jr, aka SNES 2, aka Mini SNES. And of course now we're going to go ahead and install this board here into it. So that's going to go into the back. And it is recommended that you go ahead and put some tape on this to shield it, though I really don't think that's too necessary per se. However, you will have some issues because there are some components right here that are sticking up and blocking a flush install on this board. Those components would actually be ones that I recently installed, which would be the capacitors. So we're going to go ahead and take care of those legs real quick. So we're going to need to go ahead and take care of these legs. That way we can put this thing on flush. Let's go ahead and get our soldering iron turned on, which is the Hakko FX951. And our soldering iron of choice today is going to be the T15 D24. This is just strictly for taking care of these solder joints at the moment. I may switch over to something else when we get to actually soldering the RGB board on there. So let's go ahead and cut these down and or shape them in a way to where it's not going to be disturbing us. Yeah, I think I could probably go with the flush cutters, honestly. And then we'll just touch up these joints. I mean, the only one that's of question is this one right here. which just would not get cut because those cutters have seen better days. Now I haven't turned the vacuum on because I'm not really doing any deep soldering yet, but I will. It's not this second. Now I'm just adding solder to touch up these joints one final time. What the hell is going on there? There we go. No, I'm not breathing in the fumes, editor. Okay, so really quick, we'll spray just a tiny bit of alcohol right there. Flush away any debris. And so the internet wants you to put this board on right here. And it's supposed to go on like so. We're going to double check to make sure we don't need to remove any components underneath this board before we progress, because it would be a pain if we have to remove this board in order to get to those components. So we've chosen some 3M electrical tape as our backing on this board. Nothing spectacular here. We're just going to cut off a couple of slivers if I can possibly reach under this with my gloves. So we don't need to cover the entirety of the board, just most of the board. So this is what I have. I'm going to cut the outline with an X-Acto blade, just like this one right here. Now the cable that we have selected for the RGB mod is a Sync-on-C, or C-Sync as they call it. So we may end up having to do some double checking with our installation in order to determine that that's correct. So there'll be a little bit of troubleshooting most likely. So now that we have the board installed, or the board laying flush here, we're going to turn on our vacuum. Now for those of you that don't know, this is one of those Boardy 4938 boards. This board is available on a GitHub page, and you can of course get it manufactured yourself. Let's get our vacuum down here. Very surprised that this giant tip is allowing me to do my work. Thought I'd have to switch to something smaller. We have our RGB board mounted. I'm not going to clean off any flux quite yet, just because we do have a couple more wires to install, such as the CY, RGB, and CS wires, and we may end up having to remove a resistor or unbridge that jumper. We'll not find out till the end. So next thing to do is to go ahead and start running our wire. So the next thing to do is to find our R1 and C1 resistors, which I think are right there. The top one is the blue, the center one is the green, and the bottom one is the red. Then we skip one and we get to our CS line, I believe, which is right here. So blue, green, red, CS. So we're going to run our wires there. So we do happen to have these colored wires right here. As much as I'd like to do the color coordination, we don't have it all in a row like this. Alright, so we'll go ahead and cut a length of wire. And we're going to have 4 strands here. So the first thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and add some flux to these spots. And then I'm going to shave back these wires using this tool right here, which is recommended by another individual in the scene. And we're just going to strip it back a little bit. And this is how it strips it, which I must say is pretty nice. Alright, so we finished stripping the wire with a recommended tool by a certain individual on the internet that speaks about his uncle and Bob doing things. I'm sure people will know who that is. Blue is at the top. Man, it would have been so nice to just put the blue one up there. That's unfortunate. Maybe I can cut these and then fold them in a way. It's just not going to be as nice. It's already bad enough that we don't have red, and we're having to substitute it with this purple, which isn't the worst in the world. So first things first, let's go ahead and get the blue soldered into that via. Now I'd like to be able to just go ahead and put the wire right through. These are not single-stranded, but well, you know, that may still happen. Let's go ahead and tin our wires. We'll add a little bit of solder to the tip of the soldering iron, and we'll get that blue one in there first. And remember, the blue one was at the top. Now that does seem a little long to me, so we're probably going to go ahead and cut this back. And I'll most likely do the same for the other ones. Now at this point, I don't know if we'll be able to go ahead and run that thing through, but we're going to try. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, unfortunately. I think if these were single-stranded, it probably wouldn't have been too big of a deal. So green is next, and what we can do is we'll go ahead and trim it before we go ahead and tin it. So we'll go ahead and do that. It actually probably would have been better if I had tinned these first before I started cutting them. I usually do that. I don't know why I didn't this time. I don't have high hopes that that green one will slide right through, but we'll see. Let's go ahead and maneuver this green over here. Yeah, that's going to be our first one that actually went through there without any problems. Alright, I don't really care much for that. It almost seems like I should just redo those. So I think I'll go ahead and do that off camera and then we'll come back. Alright, so I think that's going to be good enough just because these wires are multi-strand. So go ahead and clean that up a little bit. Alright, and next we're going to go ahead and connect these wires to the board. I think right there will be a decent length. Don't want to cut it too short in case we make some mistakes. Let's see if we can't get a shot of this tool in action here. It's because I'm doing it on camera that this is happening. There we go. Of course, I bet you anything we didn't get that shot. But there we are. So we'll go ahead and add some leaded solder here. Just for reference, I did change out my soldering iron tip. We changed out to a T15 C1, but we probably could have easily have gotten by with the previous soldering iron tip. I just did this because I wanted to get some finer solder joints right here. So in our setup, red is purple, and our cable select or C-Sync is on the other side. Of course, green is swapped as well. If I weren't such a stickler for the colors needing to matter, we wouldn't be in this mess. So our red is the purple. A lot of the sleeve is just disappearing and I don't like that. Let's go ahead and cut some of that back. We'll come back and add a little bit more solder to that. Next is green. We'll make our adjustment once we get this last one tacked in. Alright. And of course you'll want to make sure none of these wires have dislodged. Let's go ahead and add a little bit more solder to this wire here. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not a fan of this multi-strand wire. A little bit more solder to the green and of course the red, or in this case it's the purple. So let's go ahead and use our flux remover to clean up all this mess. Alright, we should be good now. And as far as wire routing is concerned, we can probably place it right here. That way the cartridge port is not poking through these connectors. We finished the installation, so we're going to go ahead and reassemble the console as much as we need to. That way we can go ahead and test it out. My understanding is that the cable that we've selected does not require the 75 ohm resistor on the C-Sync line, so we should be able to test this out without a problem. Alright, so as you can clearly tell, we have picture on screen right there. Good old-fashioned Donkey Kong Country for the SNES. We have our RetroTINK right here, and of course we do not have the old multi-out hooked up. RGB is hooked up. So we're using the RetroTINK, and right now those are our settings. We're using a wobbling pixels profile, and of course input is SCART RGBS. The profile we're using currently is the SNES and SFC DAR Sharp. Ideally we have one that fills the whole screen, but you don't want to overstretch the image. Well, I haven't completely reassembled the SNES, but it is tempting to start playing some games. I don't know that I'm going to get a chance to reassemble it today. Well, I gotta say that I'm not too pleased with the way the multi-core, multi-strand wire came out. Sure, the installation is nice. It's not my cleanest install, but it is functional, as we see right there. Probably in one of our next RGB mod videos we'll use a single core. I think in the end the customer will be very happy with the quality that they receive out of this particular installation. And well, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty tempting for me to go ahead and just enjoy the quality myself right now before putting the console back together. If you found this video helpful or useful, please remember to leave us a like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm gonna play some games.